Hey YouTube, John here from SysEng Quick. This is our third video about installing Niri on Fedora. We started out with a completely manual deployment. In the last video, we added Kickstart to automate a minimal Fedora install. And now we're going to use Ansible to deploy Niri on our newly kickstarted host. After the last video, I made one small tweak to the Kickstart to include some required Python libraries for Ansible, so our VM is ready to be configured. Okay, let's get started. The Kickstart file will be included in this Git repo, but here are the two packages I needed to add to it to make sure Ansible would work for what we're about to do. The first thing I want to do is set up a dev container. This will allow us to work on any platform, Windows, macOS, or Linux. I really love dev containers. So let's do that first. I want to start by making a directory called .devcontainer, and I'll add a file to it called devcontainer.json. I've already created this file. Let me go ahead and copy the contents. We're going to name this dev container sysengquick-fedora-niri. We're going to use Docker Compose to set up our container. We'll say we're going to use a compose.yaml file. The compose service is going to be called devc, and the workspace folder we'll use inside the devc service is /workspace. We have a few customizations for VS Code, a few extensions that will be helpful to us during our development. Setting up Prettier as the default formatter for JSON, JSON-C, and Markdown files. We set the Ansible extension to be responsible for all files ending in .yml. We're going to format our files on save, trimming new lines and whitespace from our files. Finally, we set up the Ansible and Python extension paths to be user local bin Python 3, which is the path inside our container. Let's go ahead and save that and make our compose.yaml file. I've made that as well, so let's go ahead and copy this. So we have a single service defined in our compose.yaml file called devc. We're going to use an image that we're going to push up to the GitHub container registry. It's not there yet, but it will be by the time this video is live. The command we're going to run is sleep infinity because we just need this container to keep running while we do dev work. We add a single environment variable so we can specify a custom Ansible configuration while we're in the dev container. Finally, we mount the /workspace file or folder as the entire Git repo. And make sure you've got the Z flag in case you have SE Linux, like I do because I'm using Fedora. Okay, let's set up a Docker file to build our container. So let's add Docker file, and we'll go ahead and copy that over. We're going to need Python. I'm going to use Python 3.11. We're setting a couple of environment variables. This is for telling Python not to save temporary files, and for Debian front-end not to do anything stupid. We want to upgrade all the packages. Python is based on Debian, so we're going to use apt-get for this. We're going to install a few packages. We're using the Slim Edition, so it's minimal, but we do need a few things it won't have. Bash completion is for Git. I like to have ping available just in case. We need Git. I always like to have less. Open SSH client, SSH pass are required for Ansible. Then we clean up after ourselves and start installing a couple of Python packages. All we're going to need for this is Ansible and Ansible lint, so I've installed those here. We are adding bash completion to our bash RC because by default root doesn't have that. We're going to set up a custom prompt, which I will add in a minute, and make sure it uses that in bash RC. Okay, let's go ahead and add that prompt. It is prompt.sh. Oh, messed that up. Hang on. There we go. And let's copy that file over. I took this prompt from the Microsoft Python dev container, so I think it's pretty good. I'm not sure what it all means, but it looks good to me and it worked, so I went ahead and used it. Okay, I think that's everything we need for our dev container. So let's go ahead and see if we can build that. Let's go to a prompt. Let's go back to compose.yaml. Let's close this for a minute. I want to get the tag here, And then I want to do docker build -t for the tag, copying that tag. And then I want to specify the Docker file is in dev container Docker file, and I'll give it a context of the current directory. There we go. Let's go ahead and press enter. Okay, there we go. We have our container locally. I will push that up to the GitHub container registry later so that we can use it without having to build it. But we're ready to start our dev container. So let's go ahead and see if we can build this. I'm going to use Control-Shift-P because I'm on Linux. That will open the command palette, and I'll select Rebuild and Reopen in Container. I'm going to add a GitHub action to create and push our container. So let's do that as well. I need to add this in the .github workflows folder. I'm going to call it devc.yaml. I've already got this customized, so let's go ahead and paste that in here. We give it a name for our workflow. We're going to say, I want this done anytime I push to the main branch. That would be anytime I do a pull request that gets into main, or if I push to main directly. I can also trigger from a workflow dispatch. Setting a couple of environment variables. We run this on Ubuntu. We give it permission to push to the package repository. I'm going to check out my repo. I'm going to log into the container registry using my GitHub actor and my secret token that I got from having this workflow. We're going to set up Docker buildx. We're going to set some metadata tags, including latest for this. And we're going to push the container image, caching to GitHub Actions using the context of current with the dev container Docker file right there, adding our labels and tags. So not too bad. That should handle our dev container. I'll test that out a little bit later. Okay, let's go ahead and make our Ansible collection skeleton. I'm going to do make dir collections. Going to go into collections. I'm going to make dir Ansible collections because structure is kind of weird. Then we're going to do Ansible Galaxy collection init. I'm going to call it sysengquick.fedora. And there we go. We have created our collection skeleton. Let's go fix some of the files it generated. Let's go into collections. Let's go into meta runtime. We need to specify one parameter. 16.0 is our minimum version of Ansible. Why 2016? I don't know. That's what I'm using. That's fine. And in Galaxy, we need to save a couple of things in here. We need to put the author name right here. So that's going to be me. Everything else really doesn't matter too much. I'm going to go ahead and tell it it's the Apache license. Is it really? I don't know. Whatever. I don't care. We need at least one tag. I'm going to call it Linux. Rest of the stuff, I'm not publishing this anywhere, so I don't really care about what it is. I just want to silence the Ansible lint warnings. So the last error we have is that we need a changelog. So let's make a changelog.markdown. Let's say it is changelog, and we'll say version 100, and we'll give it a date of 34th, 23rd. Initial release. There we go. So there is our changelog for this. Save this file again. Ansible lint should clear up all of our errors. Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted. So let's go ahead and remove this temporary README. I don't want to use that. So let's go over here and let's go into sysengquick. Let's go into Fedora and let's do a remove of the README. Let's do a git move of workspace README to here. And then let's go up to the directory. And I want to symlink everything in collections. I want to symlink the README here, and I want to symlink the changelog here so it's easier to find it. There we go. That's everything I want to do right now. I think everything else should be good here. Yeah, this looks fairly good. I want to add this to the git ignore, so let's add that. And then let's fix git ignore. It should be the entire Ansible directory. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, next I want to configure our Ansible. So let's go ahead and make the ansible.config file that we referenced in the compose with the variable. And I'll go ahead and copy the config file that I want. So we're going to specify our inventory file. Our remote user is going to be proxmox. We're going to use password files for the collection and become password. The collections path, we need to add the workspace collections directory to the path. I'm going to disable host key checking, and I'm going to make sure that if we have an inventory, it better be parsable. Okay, let's save that, and let's go ahead and make the inventory file. So inventory.yaml, and let's go ahead and make that. I want to have a group called niri. There's going to be host in there. The host we're going to have is Fedora niri kickstart. Now, I have DNS set up for my host, so this is all I would actually need. But if you don't have DNS and need to specify the actual host you're connecting to, you can add the property ansible host and give it an IP address. So I'll leave that in there, but I'm going to comment it out since my DNS is working here. Okay, that should be our Ansible configuration. So let's go ahead and start working on our first playbook. Let's go into the collections directory, and let's make a new folder for our playbooks. And our first playbook is going to be niri.yaml. Remember, we want the YML extension for Ansible playbooks so that our dev container knows to use the Ansible extension to parse things and help us out with things. Okay, so let's make our playbook. We need to give it a name, so I'll say install niri on Fedora. I'm going to target that niri group I just made. I do want to gather facts, but I only want to gather a subset of the facts. I don't want all of them because that's kind of slow. So I'm going to say not all the facts, not even the minimal. I only want the OS family fact, and we'll see why shortly. Now I need to give it some roles. The role I want to do is sysenj quick.fedora.niri, and I'm going to give it tags of niri in case I want to skip this role in the future. It won't make much sense right now, but I think we will probably have other roles later on. Okay, let's go back to our roles, and let's make that niri role. So we'll have niri tasks main.yaml. And the first thing I think we should do in here is set up the Fedora Copper repo. So let's go ahead and import our Copper task. So I'm going to import task copper.yml, and I'm going to give this a tag of copper. Now we will go ahead and add that copper file. And to add this, we could use a module from community.general. However, I felt that was a bit heavy. I didn't want to install that collection just for this one thing. It's not too hard to get this by using the getURL module. So that's what I'm going to do instead. So let's say set up niri copper repo. And I'm going to use the getURL. And then the URL is going to be the base URL /coppers niri fedora-version. Let's see here. I think I wanted to put HTTPS at the front of this. And let's see here. Now I need yalter-niri-fedora-version again.repo. Now I tell it where to store this file. We're going to store it in etc yum repos.d, and then we're going to put it in the _copper, and then we're going to put it in the base URL, and then it's going to be yalter-niri.repo. Okay, and finally the mode is going to be 0644, and I usually quote these, although I don't actually have to, I think, here. You only need to if you put these at the beginning. But anyway, it's fine. So, vars, base URL should be copper.fedorainfracloud.org. Yep, that looks right. And version is going to be, yeah, we need it there. Version is going to be Ansible facts.distribution major version. Okay, check that I didn't make any typos there real quick. Yep, that does look good. So I think we are all set. If I go ahead and save this file, hopefully that Ansible lit warning will go away now. There we go. Okay, so that is our Copper repo. Okay, I think now that we have our Copper repo, we should go ahead and install our packages. So let's go ahead and copy this. I'll make a new import task. And this will be packages, and we will import packages task, and it will be packages. Okay, and now we'll make a new task file, packages.yaml, and let's define our packages. So in the niri file, let's go ahead and set up vars main.yaml. Niri packages is going to be an array. I want to install niri. I want to install blueman applet. I want to install nm applet. I want to install pa-systray. This is everything we installed during our original manual installation. However, since we don't have GNOME, we actually don't have any graphical login manager. So we need to add something else as well. So we're going to add SDDM and SDDM themes. So SDDM is an alternative to GDM. It's a bit lighter weight. If we install GDM, it's actually going to install GNOME itself. Not everything, but at least a minimal installation, and that's a bit heavy for me. So I'm going to use SDDM instead. Okay, there are all of our packages, so let's go ahead and tell it to install that. So our task is going to be install niri packages, and we're going to use the built-in package, and the name is going to be niri packages. And there we go. There are our packages. So we have installed all of our stuff. So I think the next step is probably configuring SDDM. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this task, and let's say we will import the SDDM tasks, and we'll give it a tag of SDDM, and then we will go ahead and make a new task file, sddm.yaml. And in this file, we need to configure our SDDM theme. So let's go ahead and do that. Configure SDDM theme. And I'm going to go ahead and copy the file to do that. So the source is going to be sddmtheme.conf. Destination is going to be etc sddm.conf.d theme.conf. The owner is going to be root. The group is going to be root. And the mode is going to be 0644. Okay, so let's make this theme file. So down in our niri role, let's make a new file. It's going to be files theme.conf. Okay, and that's a very simple file. We have theme and current equals Maldives. That's it. That's all there is. Okay, that looks good for our SDDM theme, but because we have a minimal installation, it's not going to start SDDM on launch, on boot up. So we should tell it to start the graphical target rather than the multi-user target. So let's go ahead and do that. Switch to graphical target, or I guess enable graphical target. We're going to use the systemd service module. The name is graphical.target. The state is going to be started, and enabled is going to be true. Okay, once we run this, we should see SDDM actually start up, and it should work on login. Okay, that looks pretty good to me, although I'm realizing I did forget one thing in all of this. Over in all of these tasks, I'm noticing that every one of these tasks here requires root privileges. So we had better do something about that. So let's make a root tasks block. We'll give it a block, and we'll say become true, and then we'll put those tasks into there. And now all of these should be run as root. The rest of our tasks, I think, do not need to be run as root. For all of our remaining tasks, we're going to need to know where the home directory is. So let's go ahead and find that. Get home directory. And the tags for this is going to be always. We always have to, so we can't ever skip it. And I want to use the Ansible built-in user to get that. And the name is going to be our Ansible user. Our state is going to be present. We are going to register this to niri user. And let's see here. Check mode is going to be true because I don't want it to create this user. It already exists, so I don't want it to actually do anything. I just want it to get information about the user. Okay, I believe that should get us the home directory. So the next thing I want to do is create all of our configuration directories. So let's go ahead and do another import task. Let's bring that down here. Import directory tasks. Okay. Oh, made a mistake there. So what directories do we actually need? We need to have the home directory. We need to add the config directory for niri, for waybar, and for systemd. Let's go back to our vars file, and we'll say niri config-ders. And we're going to need, what is this? Niri. We're going to need waybar, and we're going to need systemd user niri service once. Is that right? That's not right. Yeah, just systemd user. There we go. Okay, so we now know what directories we actually want to make. So let's go ahead and run our directory task. Let's make our new task file, directory.yaml. Okay, and we're going to run a loop on these directories. So let's create our config directories. There we go. And I want to use the file module to do this. The state is going to be a directory, and the destination is going to be niri-user.home, and then it's going to be .config, and then whatever our item is. That'll be for our loop. The owner is going to be Ansible user. Same thing for the group. And the mode is going to be 0755. Okay, and now we're going to loop over niri config-ders. And I believe that should be everything for our config directories. So yeah, that looks right to me. Now that we have created our directories, let's go ahead and add the niri configuration. So let's go ahead and make a new file in files called niri config.kdl. Let me go grab the file over here. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the configuration we made in the first video. I went ahead and added the output to be 1920 by 1080. I commented out the waybar configuration, wherever that is, and we're preferring no CSD. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so that's all I've done, just like we had in the beginning. So let's go ahead and import config tasks, and we can just go ahead and copy this, and let's change this to config. Okay, and now I need a config.yaml. So config.yaml. Okay, and this one I want to configure our niri configuration. So I think we'll probably end up doing this in a loop as well. We've got a pretty good structure for what I need. Just need to copy this over to the right location. So let's go ahead and go back to our vars. Where is that at? Right over here. And let's say niri config files. And that's going to be niri/config.kdl. We'll add more of them later. And then let's close this. and this. Here we go. So copy config files. And then we're going to use the built-in copy module. And the source is going to be item from our loop. And the destination is going to be niri-user.home/.config. And then it's going to be /item. I think that makes sense. And then our owner and group are the same one we had in directory. So let's go ahead and copy all of this over here. But our mode is now 0644. So yeah, that seems like it should work. Now we just need to add our loop. And our loop is niri config files. Okay, let's go ahead and add more of the configuration files. So let's make the files for waybar config.jsonc, and there is style.css. Let's go ahead and copy both of those. So there's config.jsonc, here's style.css. Okay, so these are the exact same ones we customized originally with niri replacing sway, so that should be good. And then let's go ahead into the vars and add the config files. Should be wayvar config.jsonc and wayvar style.css. Okay. And then we have a couple more files we want to do. We want to add our systemd unit files for sway background and sway idle. So let's go ahead and do that. Systemd sway background.service. Go ahead and copy that. And then we'll go ahead and add sway idle.service. Go ahead and copy that. Okay, that should be good. So in our vars, we'll go ahead and add that. So systemd sway background dot service, systemd sway idle dot service. I guess it needs to be systemd user actually. Yeah, to make sure the paths are correct. So let's go ahead and move these into a folder under there. So let's put that under user, then move that there, and move that there. Okay, that should be correct now for all of the config files. So let's make sure that looks right. .config systemd user, whatever, systemd, yeah, okay, that should work now. So that's all of our service files. The only thing, though, is when one of these service files were to change, we would need to notify systemd, I think. So we might want to separate these from the config file into its own systemd stuff. So why don't we actually do that instead? So let's go to back to main. And let's say import systemd unit tasks. And we will go ahead and say systemd for that. And we'll go ahead and make a new task file for this. So systemd.yaml. And we're going to do the exact same thing we did in config with the copying. But instead of this, we're going to say niri systemd service files, copy systemd service files, and then if we make any changes, we want to have a notification. We want to notify syseng quick Fedora niri, and for some reason they want everything to be capitalized, so let's do that. And let's say system control daemon reload. So we'll go ahead and add that in there. Let's go back to our vars and switch this over to niri systemd service files, and we will move both of those over there. The next thing to do is add that handler. We don't have that yet, so let's go ahead and add our handler for this. So in our niri role, we'll do handlers main.yaml, and we'll go ahead back to this task and copy this notification. They have to match exactly. So the name must match exactly. We're going to run a command. The name of the command is going to be systemctl-user daemon reload. We are going to, I think that might be it. No, we need to do a changed when of true. And then we're going to have to ignore this Ansible lint problem because we can't actually use systemd module for this. So it's command instead of module. So I want to do no QA, command instead of module. Okay, so that looks good. We have our handler now, so everything should be okay with all of our config files. We will reload systemd whenever we need to do that. So I think the last thing we would need to do is add the once for all of these files. So how would we do that? I think to do that, we'll just run a command loop. So let's say that the name is add niri service once, and we will use the command module. And the command is going to be systemctl user add once niri.service, and it's going to be item, and I'll put that in quotes even though I don't think it's technically necessary. And then we need to loop over the niri service once. Maybe that's the better term to put it. Okay, is that everything we would need to do this? I think actually it is. I need to say that I don't know when to say it changed when. I mean, we could say true. That's not actually correct. I think that it has no output when it doesn't change, but the return code is the same whether or not it does change. So why don't we register niri result, and I'll say changed when niri result dot standard out lines length is greater than 0. And we'll see if that works. I'm not sure if it will, but I think it might. Okay, so it's probably going to whine about the command set of module thing again. So let's go ahead and fix that. That was in the handler, right? So I can just copy this. Okay, it's going to process that again. Okay, that should be fine now. Okay, niri service once. Let's go ahead and add those as well. So niri service once, waybar.service, sway background.service, and sway idle.service. Those are the 3 services that I want to add there. Yeah, I think that should be good. I think that might even be the end. We might be ready to actually test this thing. My notes tell me I have a better idea, so let's try that instead. First, let's say changed when is true, and then I'll add the creates parameter. And if it is niri user home dot config systemd user niri service once item. Yeah, so this will create a symlink in this folder to that service. So if it has that file, we won't run this at all. Don't need the result anymore. I'll leave this here in case that doesn't work out. We have to try the other one. But yeah, we are definitely ready to try this out now. Okay, let's see if this stuff actually works. Let's do an Ansible ping check real quick. Okay, that part works. I can reach the machine. So let's do ansible playbook syseng quick.fedora.niri. And I'll show you the host is still right where it was back in its very static state. Okay, it's made the niri copper repo. It's trying to install packages. This part is probably going to be the longest part of it. It's only the package. Everything else should be pretty fast, but this part, this might take, I don't know, a minute, minute and a half, but well, nothing failed, so let's see if things actually worked. Well, I see that we do have this Fedora niri kickstart thing. Let's make this full screen. Now let's go ahead and try to log in. Proxmox, and it's secret to everybody. Niri session. We've got our background. I see Waybar is configured. It looks okay right now. Let's start a terminal. Yeah, I've got a terminal. If I look in, I'll turn that off. Less config, niri config KDL. Yep, we've got the right mode there. We've got no client-side decorations. I'm trying to think what else would be on here that I wouldn't have. I know the systemd stuff works because we've got Waybar, we've got the background, we've got sway idle, right? Yeah. Okay. I would say all of this worked. If I go into config systemd and user, that go away, and niri service once. Yeah, this certainly appears to be working. Now, let's see if all of our plays are idempotent. Nothing should change if I run this again. Okay. Add niri service once. It says everything changed there. That's interesting because that means it did run those. So my change command doesn't seem to have actually worked there. I have to look in to see why that might be. Okay, just real quick, I found out that it was working correctly. It's the changed when part. I'm so used to adding that I added it, but you don't need it when you have the creates part, because then it won't run and the linter won't complain about things being changed. So I just need to get rid of the changed when, and things do work. So if we go to the command line again, and we run just the tag systemd with the verbosity turned up, you can see did not run command since this command already exists, or this service already exists. So it does work. I just had the changed when flag set wrong. I plan to extend this concept, customize the Fedora install a bit more than it already is. We've got niri working, and that's great. There are more things we can do to it. There are more things I would like to do. I'd like to configure all my dot files. I'd like to configure other packages I want to install. Things like that. I want to make this a full-blown deployment for Fedora, the way I want to run it. And I want it to be a bit more configurable than it is right now. But that'll be for another video. As far as today, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Come back and see us next time. We will do something else. I don't know. Thanks for watching.